Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner into a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for Edison format. As last weekend I was able to go to an Edison Locals for the first time. I normally had to work during these things, so yeah, finally got to go to one. I ended up going 3-1 in 4 rounds. My only loss being the Gemini combo. That's a deck I'd never seen before. It's one of those decks where it was only there as a concept in actual Edison format back in 2010. But now, 14 years later, people are experimenting with stuff, and now we're starting to see a deck that see play. And yeah, I know, I just said 14 years ago. My God, that's a painful thing to say. But regardless, as far as what I played in the format, go figure, what did I play? Disaster Dragon, or Trap Dragons as it's also known. It's the other Dragon deck in the format. The other one that people are aware of is the Dragon Turbo deck. That's the one where either it just pops the hell off and sets up this crazy board, or it bricks and you're like, this is the worst deck ever. And that's kind of how people feel about this deck too, is you got the people who think this deck is really good and it's a top tier, and you got the people who think this deck is really bad and is a low tier. Like, Disaster Dragon's placement on various tier lists I've seen is just all over the damn place. So it's kind of funny as someone who played this deck back then and still now. In my opinion, this deck is still very good in the format. It has taken a bit of a drop because of how popular some other decks are in the format. Machina was always a rough matchup, but in particular, Diva Heroes, like heroes in general, are not easy to beat with this deck, but anything that shits out Ab-Zero is always an issue. Like, Ab-Zero's always been just like a kryptonite for this, and I've had to take some steps for my deck in order to try and deal with that. I ended up not playing against a hero deck. I ended up playing, what was it, like, Quick Draw, then I played against Zombies, and then I played against Gemini combo, and then finally I played against Blackwings, and it was Gemini that I lost to because he went the hell off with Lone Fire Double Supervised, which is, like, from what I heard, the absolute nuts. And so I'm staring at a board of like double Giga Plants, another Gemini Monster, and 2 back row. Even if I drew, oh, what was it? Yeah, I drew Future Fusion, but like that wasn't going to do anything. He had a Gemini Spark set, and the other one was Prison, so I lost that game pretty handily. And then the next one, I had Trap Does Shoot, but he had Brain Control, so things went downhill from there. But I digress. So I'm still going to play the deck in the format because this deck is still very good. It's just there are some tweaks I think I'm going to make to my main and my side to better accommodate some stuff. And then what else? A video idea I'm actually thinking of making in the future is like how you adjust this deck over the course of the next couple sets, because a common mistake people make when it comes to this deck is it's only played during Edison format, but the fact of the matter is Disaster Dragon itself is playable for a good year and a half after Edison. This deck doesn't actually go away until 2012 when you have Dino Rabbit, Inzectors, and Windups. Those 3 decks are hard to beat, and then Future Fusion gets banned, Red Med goes to 1, and this deck just completely dies. Well, like for 2011, this deck is not only playable, but it actually performs at its best with, what, 2 European YCS tops and a Nationals appearance, and then it also goes to Worlds. And that's because of like cards that come out over the course of the next year. So I'm thinking of like making a video talking about what's in Shining Darkness, Gold Series, D-Rev, so that people can like experiment with this deck when people inevitably move on to other formats. Because while Edison is still very hot and thriving and whatnot, I do think we're going to eventually get to a point where Edison gets solved, and it's going to start seeing more people try out other formats, and there may be formats that this deck is playable in. So with that out of the way, let's actually get into the deck itself. So for the monsters, of course, you got 3 Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon at his full broken glory. And yeah, some of my opponents had never seen Red Med on errata before, so when I was like, summon Red Med, effect, banish, summon Red Med, effect, you're like, wait, what? And like, yeah, that's how he worked back then. He was crazy good, and if I can get Red Med on board and have it stick, good times. Also, as a bit of a fun factoid, I opened with Future Fusion, I think, 7 times in 4 rounds. Only resolved it 3 times, though. Half of my opponents had answers for it. But yeah, card is glued to my fucking hand. Last of the big monsters in Prime Material Dragon. I put this in the main specifically to deal with Ab-Zero and like other decks that are heavy removal. But honestly, Prime just did nothing for me. More often than not, I think I got hit by D prisons And he sat in my hand a lot. Like, I ended up dead drawing him way more than I would have liked, especially when Future Fusion doesn't resolve. And I think I only ever summoned... Yeah, I only summoned it once. It did stop a Torrential, but otherwise, I think I'm going to side deck this for Ab-Zero matchups and play Blizzard Dragons in the main instead, because that's a card I want to experiment with, as Blizzard Dragon has some neat little applications against some matchups, and it's also good for just outing Spirit Reaper, kind of like how DD Warrior Lady is in builds of this deck, which I am playing. Then for the smaller guys, 3 copies of Quackmere Drago and 3 copies of Red Eyes Wyvern. So, also a common misnomer people think about this is that this deck is reliant on Quackmere, and yes, Drago is an auto-win versus some matchups. Even if he's not an auto-win, he's still annoying for some decks to face because he cuts you off from some of the best generics in the extra deck right now. The best and really only played level 5 synchros are either Catastor or Magical Android, and Drago stops that. He stops some specialized synchros too. He stops Thought Ruler, Colossal Fighter, Red Dragon Archfiend, Ancient Fairy Dragon, but nobody plays Ancient Fairy really in this format. He stops 5-headed in the mirror. In the mirror, it stops Red Med from being summoned. Like, Drago puts in work in some surprisingly efficient ways, and he cuts off Gorz, Trag, and Battle Fader. So, like, even if you're not against Lightsworn or Blackwings or zombies, Drago's still annoying enough that you gotta, like, respect it. Plus, he's also a 1900 attack normal summon. And 1900 is pretty fucking big. Like, the only Blackwing that gets over this is either a Blackwing with a Kalut, or just hard summoning Sirocco, assuming I don't, like, kill it or something. And, like, Lightsworns, they have basically Jane. Otherwise, they have to Honest or set Raikou. And if your opponent's setting setting against Drago, that's a fairly decent re. He also stops, like, Mystic Tomato and, what's his name? Shining Angel. So, like, Drago is still good enough that you main, and that in this deck, I still main deck the full 3 copies. I will side him out for some matchups for Thunder King Ryo, because against Machina it's not that great. Against Gemini, I don't think it's that great. But I would not go, oh, my deck doesn't fear Drago, it'll be fine. It's like, no, Drago can still annoy you in a little ways. 1600 defense is also not bad either. Red Eyes Wyvern is mainly here for Future Fusion fodder, but 1800 attack is still good in the format. I actually managed to win a game strictly off of just summoning both of these two, just bashing face over and over until my opponent ran out of life. And then that's it for your main beaters for the utility cards. So obviously what makes this deck Disaster Dragon is that it plays Mash Dragon. Mash Dragon's a good battle recruiter, and in this format, battle recruiters is still nice. Your main targets for this is either another copy of himself, Exploder Dragon, or one of your 2 tuner options. I'm only playing the 1 tuner option, which is Debris Dragon. The idea behind this is that Mash Dragon floats into Debris, you normal summon another level 3 from the hand, and you make Black Rose. Didn't come up, but it's still kind of a thing. I do wish I was playing Magna Draco, because you can, in some cases, float into a Draco, and then if you're able to sequence your play right, you can, banish something for Red Med, summon back Prime Material, and then synchro for Stardust. Mind you, that's a bit of wishful thinking. It was always something that I never really got to do unless I was in a good game state back in actual Edison format. So I don't know how worth it is to try and fit Magna Draco in here, or I just cut the tuners and just play more hard nose, where I'll only synchro if I take my opponent's monsters with brain control. Post Shining Darkness, it's actually more worthwhile to play the tuners in here because of Dread Dragon. Exploder Dragon, outs certain things, Armor Master, Colossal Fighter, and then Totem Dragon. I'm only playing the 1 because I'm not playing any of the multiple big tribute guides like White Knight Dragon, Light and Darkness Dragon in main. I do kind of wish I had White Knight Dragon in here just to answer Deep Prisons, Brain Control, Mind Control, whatnot. So that's also a thing that I will consider. I don't mind taking this deck up to 41, so I might just cut the Prime Material and put it into Blizzards. And then lastly, for the main deck, 2 copies of DD Warrior Lady. Yeah, not much for me to say here. This card's pretty prominent in Disaster Dragon builds as a means to answer cards that you normally can't get rid of with your beaters and whatnot. Again, Armor Master or Spirit Reaper. It also allows you to I guess play through Honest, kind of. Then for the spells and traps, so 2 copies of Book of Moon. Not much to say about Book. Book is a good card. And I have one ulti that I like to show off. 2 copies of Gold Sark, which searches out Future Fusion. Again, this card is stupid good, and for some reason I just magically draw the Fufu when I need to. Like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say I was Peter Chang. 1 copy of Brain Control. This is the last format where Brain is around, and I did Brain for game quite a few times. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I got 3 people with a Brain Control that allowed me to win. And obviously, using Brain to take a Stardust and then banish it for Red Med is such a powerful feeling. Heavy Storm, best back removal, Mystical Space Typhoon, and then one My Body as a shield. This was a tech back in the day, and frankly, it's a tech even now. This card performed very nicely. I was able to stop a TT, Mirror Force, Icarus attack, plus other just like random like removals. Like, this is also one of my answers to Absolute Zero, and I think I'll just stick with My Body in the main and then move Prime to the side. It also stops Smashing Ground, Lightning Vortex. It's just a good card. You cannot activate it in Damage Step, though. Not in this format. That gets eroded later on, but in Edison format, you can't. So My Body cannot stop a Raikou you flip up. And 1 Lightning Vortex just for mass removal against combo boards. Kind of want to take this up to 2, at least 1 on the side and 1 on the main. Just I'd have to go find a super. But yeah, I like the idea. Just if my opponent is playing a deck like Gemini Gemini Combo, I can Vortex punish the board. Yeah, their Giga Vise their Super Vise will float into a normal monster, and their Black Root Dragon will also float into another Giga Plant. But those things are still 2400. Red Meg can beat them over. And then 1 Smashing Ground just to out annoying cards like Spear Reaper. It's non-targeting removal. Yeah, not much to say here. Then for the namesake of the deck, Traps. So 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, 2 copies of Dimensional Prison, 1 copy of Dust Tornado. Back row itself is actually difficult for this deck to power through. That's why I've never liked the Gladiator Beast matchup. And the Hero matchup's also iffy, is because just like us, they play a good amount of back row, and losing your Mass Dragons and your Drago is kind of annoying. Call the Haunted. You play out of the graveyard. Call the Haunted is like another Red Med. Starlight Road to protect my shit from Heavy Storm or Icarus attack, which happened during my Blackwing matchup. Game 1, I had My Body. Game 2, I had Starlight Road. And if you resolve Starlight Road, it's such a tempo swing for your opponent, because now you've got to deal with a Stardust negate. Mirror Force, Solemn, TT, and I played Trap Dust Shoot, and I resolved Trap Dust Shoot a couple times. Hilariously enough, in my game 3 against Quick Draw, I go first, I open Dust Shoot, I Dust Shoot his hand, and his hand is like 2 spells, like a trap. He's got a Caius and a Raikou. I'm like, I'm going to put back that Raikou and force you to draw a monster to get that Caius live. And because I was able to stick 2 monsters on the board before he was able to get his own monster on the board, I just kept popping his monsters away, and he was never able to drop the Caius. And for the extra deck, the only one that really matters, 5-headed Dragon. That being said, I do have Trident Drgon in here because Prime Material and Debris Dragon equals this. And yes, I am aware of the upcoming Tenpai Dragon deck and Legacy of Destruction that unironically plays Trident Drgon, and I am so hyped for that. I will try and build it at some point because I want an excuse to bust this out unironically at a regionals for the first time since 2012. Double Stardust Dragon for Starlight Road and potential brain control stuff. RDA, Ancient Fairy, Black Rose, Exploder Dragon Wing, Iron Chain, and then for the non-dragons, Thought Ruler, Colossal Fighter, Goyo, Brio, Urquizzaz, and Allied Justice Catastor. Why Urquizzaz? Piercing damage. Sometimes you just have to deal with a Spirit Reaper, and you don't draw the DD Warrior Lady. Then for the side deck, I side decked 1 Light and Darkness Dragon for the matches I think where he'd be useful. The theory being that if you're able to take control of the game and like start simplifying things, you slam a lad down, and some decks just cannot deal with a lad in a simplified game state, especially if Red Med's in the graveyard, because then when lad dies and floats, you get Red Med or Quackamere Drago. 1 more copy of DD Warrior Lady so I could side it in for the appropriate matchups. 2 copies of Thunder King Ryo for Machina and just decks where Drago's not good. I want to have something with a similar level of stunning power, and Thunder King Ryo is able to do that. He stops a good amount of search effects, and he is able to inherit and negate special summons. One Soul Taker for just removal. System Down for mocking as well. Cross Out, it's just good against a lot of decks right now. And there's a lot of decks that play like Raikou, Hamsters, and Cross Out just answers that. 2 more copies of Dust Tornado for the more back row heavy decks. Pulling the rug for Monarchs. Monarchs are also an annoying deck for this deck to face because Treeborn Frog does not care about your setup, and Caius is just a jackass. On that note, I sided into Massacre Strix also for the Monarch matchup. Again, I wanted that hate for that matchup so that I can actually like win. And finally, Royal Oppression. I'll side this in for some matchups going first. It's not really a great going second card. I don't think it is. Mind you, if you're able to like crack your opponent's board and set up yours and then flip Oppression, it's of course very strong. So maybe I'm not quite right on that one, but I side out Trap Dust Shoot going second a lot. That was an interesting conversation I had with one of my opponents. Was how do you even side for this format? It's like it's a little different than how you would side for modern format, but it's still kind of saying like you side out cards that are not as great for some matchups in favor of stuff for others. Like I sided out Dragos for Thunder King Ryos for the Gemini deck, and I sided out Trap Dust Shoot. I sided out Starlight Road, because if they see a Starlight Road once, they're not going to really play into it again. Smashing Ground, Lightning Vortex, depending on some matchups. And that's really all I got to say about that. So, all in all, it was a great time. I like playing the format. That being said, I am a little bit concerned about how the format is going, because now that we're seeing like more like modern deck building influences creep their way in with decks like Dragon Turbo, I'm like, I don't know. Like it makes it not as fun if people are going to be trying to like cram in these like modern style combo like decks. Because like one of the appeals of Edison format is that you don't really have to worry about those type of decks. But then you go up against a deck that makes you wish you had Maxi or Nibiru, and it's just like, But that's maybe just my boomer aspect kicking in finally. I've been, for a Yugi boomer, I've usually been pretty good about like accepting stuff, but there might be a point where I'm going to finally start drawing a line and go, okay, this shit's starting to get dumb. But regardless, comment down below on what you're playing for format, if you're playing this deck, and how you would be playing your version of this deck, if you still are. And that's all I got to say. So until next time, this is BlueStar899, jacking out.